Let me walk you through what I'm picking up on because this energy feels urgent, emotional, and very close to breaking through the surface. There's a strong possibility that someone has been drafting and deleting messages to you, typing out confessions at 2 a.m. and erasing them before dawn, writing entire paragraphs about how they feel and then convincing themselves it's not the right time, not the right words, not the right moment. But what I'm sensing is that all of that restraint might be reaching its breaking point. Something could be pushing them past their fear, past their pride, past whatever has been keeping them silent. And when they finally hit send, it's going to contain everything they've been holding back. This isn't going to be a breadcrumb. This isn't going to be a vague, I've been thinking about you, followed by nothing substantial. What I'm picking up on feels explosive because it might be completely honest in a way they haven't been before, vulnerable in a way that could shock you, direct in a way that leaves no room for misinterpretation. They might be done playing it safe, done pretending they're fine without you, done convincing themselves that silence is easier than the risk of rejection. And you might be about to see a side of them you've never witnessed before because desperation for connection can crack people open in ways that comfort never does. Drop a if you've been sensing someone's energy building towards something. Now, let me talk about who this person might be and what could be driving this explosive communication. This could be someone from your recent past, someone you had a connection with that ended before it really began, or ended messily, or ended with things left unsaid. Someone who's been watching you from a distance, seeing you live your life without them, and realizing that the space you used to occupy in their daily reality hasn't been filled by anyone else. What I'm sensing about this person is significant regret. They might be looking back at how things went down between you and seeing their mistakes clearly now, the ways they took you for granted, the ways they let fear or ego or bad timing dictate their choices, the ways they walked away from something real because it felt safer than staying and risking getting hurt. And time apart might have given them perspective they didn't have before. They might have tried to move on, tried to find what they had with you somewhere else, tried to convince themselves that the connection wasn't as special as it felt, but it didn't work. And now they're sitting with the uncomfortable truth that they might have let go of something they should have fought for. What's explosive about the communication that might be coming is that they could be ready to admit all of this, to drop the pretense, to stop protecting their ego and just be honest about how they feel, what they want, and what they're hoping might still be possible between you. This message might contain things like, I know I messed up. I know I didn't show up the way you deserved. And I need you to know that I see that now. I've tried to move on. I've tried to tell myself that what we had wasn't that deep, but I can't stop thinking about you. I don't know if you still care or if I burn that bridge completely, but I have to tell you the truth. I miss you. I miss us. I miss who I was when I was with you. I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back immediately. I just need you to know that walking away from you was the biggest mistake I've made. The energy feels desperate but genuine, like someone who's been holding their breath for so long that they finally have to exhale, regardless of the consequences. Comment honesty if you've been waiting for someone to finally tell you the truth. Let me also talk about the timing of this because explosive communications don't usually happen randomly. There's often a trigger. This person might have recently seen something that made them realize they're running out of time. Maybe they saw you looking happy in a photo. Maybe they heard through mutual connections that you're doing well or potentially interested in someone new. Maybe they had a moment of clarity where they realized that if they don't reach out soon, the window might close permanently. Or something in their own life might be shifting. Maybe they just ended another relationship that made them realize what they lost with you. Maybe they hit a milestone birthday that's making them reflect on regrets. Maybe they're going through something hard and recognizing that you're the person they wish they could talk to about it. There's also a possibility that they've been building courage for a while, that this message has been forming over weeks or months, getting clearer and more urgent until they can't hold it in anymore. Like pressure building in a volcano until it has to erupt. What I'm sensing is that when this communication comes, it might feel sudden to you, but for them, it's the culmination of a long internal battle. They've probably gone back and forth 1,000 times, convinced themselves to reach out, then talked themselves out of it, then convinced themselves again. But this time, they might actually follow through. This time, the need to speak might be stronger than the fear of your response. And the message itself could be long, really long, the kind that requires scrolling, that's broken into multiple texts because it's too much for one message. That might even come as a voice note because they need you to hear the emotion in their voice, not just read words on a screen. They might pour everything out, the regrets, the realizations, the specific moments they can't stop replaying, the things they wish they'd said when they had the chance, the ways you've stayed on their mind even when they've tried to push the thoughts away. This could be cathartic for them, finally releasing what they've been carrying. But it might also be overwhelming for you receiving this level of emotional intensity without warning. Let me talk about what this communication might stir up in you, because your response is just as important as their message. If this person hurt you, if their silence or their choices caused you pain, this message might bring up complicated feelings. Part of you might feel validated, relieved, even excited that they finally see what they lost. Another part of you might feel angry that it took them this long, frustrated that they get to control the timing of when they come back into your life. You might feel your heart soften immediately, ready to welcome them back because you've been waiting for this. Or you might feel your walls go up, protective instincts kicking in to remind you how much it hurt when they weren't there. Both responses are valid. All of your feelings about this are valid. What's important is that you don't respond immediately from a place of pure emotion, whether that emotion is excitement, anger, longing, or skepticism. Give yourself time to actually process what they're saying, to feel your feelings, to get clear on what you want, not just what feels good in the moment of finally being seen by them again. Because here's what I'm sensing very clearly. Explosive communication can be powerful and meaningful, but words alone don't rebuild trust. Emotional confessions don't automatically fix what was broken. Someone finally being honest about their feelings doesn't erase the time they spent being dishonest or absent. You deserve more than just passionate words. You deserve consistent follow through. You deserve changed behavior, not just changed rhetoric. You deserve someone who doesn't just tell you how much you mean to them in a moment of desperation, but who shows you through their actions over time. Drop a if you know you deserve actions, not just words. Now, let me address what might come after this initial explosive message, because the first communication is just the beginning of a potentially longer conversation. If you respond, even just to acknowledge that you received their message, they might take that as permission to keep going, to share more, to ask questions, to try to rebuild connection through continued dialogue. They might want to know if you still think about them, if there's any chance you'd be willing to try again, if you can forgive them for how they handled things, if you're seeing anyone, if your heart is still open to the possibility of them. And you'll have to decide what you're willing to share, how much access you want to give them to your current emotional state, whether you want to protect yourself with vague answers or be fully honest about where you are. There's no right answer here. You get to move at your own pace. You get to share as much or as little as feels safe and authentic to you. What I'm picking up on is that this person might be persistent if they sense any opening. They might not just send one message and disappear again. They could be prepared to really try this time, to have the hard conversations, to answer your questions, to prove through sustained effort that they're serious about making things right. But they also might get scared if your response isn't what they hoped for. They might retreat if you set firm boundaries or express hurt or anger. They might realize that explosive confession is easier than the actual work of rebuilding trust and repairing damage. So pay attention not just to their initial words, but to how they handle your response. Do they stay present if you're angry? Do they respect your boundaries if you need space? Do they keep showing up if you're not immediately receptive? Or do they pull back if you don't make it easy for them? Do they get defensive if you express how their actions affected you? Do they pressure you for immediate forgiveness or commitment? Those reactions will tell you everything you need to know about whether this explosive communication is the beginning of real change or just a temporary emotional release that won't lead to anything sustainable. Let me also talk about the possibility that this communication might not be what you want to hear or might come from someone you've already moved past. Just because someone reaches out with intensity and honesty doesn't mean you're obligated to engage. You're allowed to have already closed that door, to have done your healing and reached a place where reopening that chapter doesn't serve you anymore. You're allowed to read their message, acknowledge that it took courage for them to send it, and still choose not to respond or not to go back down that road. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response. Sometimes protecting your peace means not letting someone back in just because they finally found the words you once desperately wanted to hear. Your healing, your growth, your current reality matters more than their delayed realizations. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they miss you now that you're gone. What I'm sensing is that you've been building something without this person. You've been moving forward, you've been reclaiming your power. And while this explosive communication might shake things up temporarily, you're strong enough now to make decisions from a grounded place rather than from the wound that used to control your choices. Comment power if you know you're not the same person who would have jumped at this before. Let me talk about what could happen if you do choose to engage and explore the possibility of reconnection. This might not be simple or easy. There could be a lot to work through, trust to rebuild, patterns to examine and consciously change, conversations that are uncomfortable but necessary. If both of you are willing to do that work, if both of you have actually grown and changed during this time apart, this explosive communication could be the catalyst for something deeper and more authentic than what you had before. Sometimes people need to lose something to truly appreciate it. Sometimes distance provides the clarity that proximity never could. Sometimes breaking apart is necessary before you can come back together in a healthier way. But That only works if both people have genuinely evolved, if both people take responsibility for their part in what went wrong, if both people are committed to doing things differently this time. You'll know relatively quickly whether that's the case. Within the first few conversations, you'll be able to tell if they've actually changed or if they've just gotten better at saying what they think you want to hear. Trust your intuition, trust your body's response to their energy, trust the part of you that knows the difference between real transformation and temporary performance, and give yourself permission to change your mind. You can be open to possibility without committing to a specific outcome. You can engage in conversation without promising anything. You can see how it feels to be in contact again without deciding right now whether you want them back in your life long term. Now, let me address the element of surprise in all of this, because you might be genuinely shocked when this message arrives. Maybe you thought this person had completely moved on. Maybe you assumed they didn't care or didn't think about you anymore. Maybe you've been working hard to convince yourself that what you had wasn't as significant as it felt. And suddenly, here's this explosive communication proving that you've been on their mind all along, that the silence wasn't indifference, that they've been struggling with the same questions and feelings you've been navigating. That validation can feel powerful. It can make you feel seen in a way you haven't felt in a long time. It can answer questions you've been carrying about whether you mattered to them at all. But don't let the surprise or the validation cloud your judgment. Don't let the relief of finally hearing from them override your wisdom about what you actually need and deserve. You can appreciate that they reached out while still maintaining clear standards for what comes next. You can be touched by their honesty while still requiring proof through action. You can feel something for them while still protecting your heart until they've demonstrated reliability. The surprise factor doesn't change what you're worth or what you should accept, it just changes the information you're working with. Drop A if you're ready for whatever message is coming your way. As we move toward closing, I want to leave you with some grounding thoughts about explosive communications and what to do when words you never expected suddenly land in your lap. First, remember that you don't have to respond immediately. Take your time, sit with what they've said, feel your feelings about it. Talk to trusted friends if that helps you process. Get clear on what you actually want before you engage. Second, trust that if this is meant to develop into something real, it will survive you taking your time and setting boundaries. If someone gets impatient or pushy because you're not responding at the pace they want, that's important information about their level of actual respect for you. Third, keep living your life. Don't put everything on hold waiting to see what happens with this person. Don't make them the center of your world again just because they sent an intense message. Keep your focus on yourself, your growth, your path. Fourth, be honest. If you respond, say what's actually true for you. Don't perform cool indifference if you're actually affected. Don't pretend you're over it if you're not. But also, don't minimize your hurt or anger if that's what's real. Authentic communication requires honesty from both sides. And finally, remember that explosive communications often feel more significant in the moment than they turn out to be in retrospect. The intensity can be intoxicating, but intensity isn't the same as substance. Heat isn't the same as depth. Give it time. See if the explosive message is followed by sustained effort and changed behavior. See if their actions match their words. See if they're willing to do the actual work of rebuilding, not just the easy work of emotional confession. You've been through enough to know that words are easy and follow through is rare. Don't settle for beautiful messages if they're not backed up by beautiful treatment. What I'm sensing most strongly is that you're in a position of power here, even if the surprise of this communication temporarily makes you feel vulnerable. You get to decide what happens next. You get to set the terms. You get to determine what you're available for and what you're not. This person might be exploding with feelings and words, but you're the one who decides if any of it matters, if any of it changes anything, if any of it is worth your time and emotional energy. Trust yourself to make that decision wisely. Trust yourself to know what you need. Trust yourself to honor your own healing and growth above someone else's belated realization of your worth. You've always been worth explosive love, explosive honesty, explosive commitment.